Hey leaders, thanks for watching again. We are in week 3 of the No Limit series. We're wrapping it up this week with the topic of let the countdown begin. And if we want to make our days count, we need to count our days. And that's really the thing that we're focusing on a lot of is the time that we have in the lives of just our students, the time that our students have in school, any of that kind of stuff. The thing about time is that it's the only resource that everyone on the planet has the same amount of. You could be the president of the United States, you could be a quarterback, you could be a Grammy-winning artist, or you could be the last pick on the dodgeball team. The stats are the same. Everybody has time limits. You only get 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 12 months a year. And not only that, it doesn't matter who you are. It seems like no one is happy with the amount of time they have. Some of us never have enough time. Some of us have way too much time. And some of us are waiting for a better time, waiting for something else to happen that we're just in a waiting pattern. The problem is it's easy to forget that our time is limited. Time is valuable, but we don't treat it like it's worth much. We often get frustrated with our lack of it when maybe we just aren't handling what we do have the right way. Or we get frustrated with having too much of it when we aren't doing our part with it to make it worthwhile. So how do you view time? Have you ever thought about it before this very moment? And it's something that God says something about, that the story of Moses says something about this. And we've been looking at the story of Moses the past couple of weeks. And this was one thing he knew very well, that his time was very limited. Now with that in mind, Moses shared something that will help you do more with your time and get more out of your time, especially for our teenagers. Now God chose Moses to lead the Israelites from slavery in Egypt to the Promised Land, a place where Israel could form a nation of their own. And though it took a lot of convincing, Pharaoh agreed to let them go. Finally, the journey for Moses and the Israelites began. But it wasn't easy. They wandered in the desert for 40 years. They depended on God daily to provide food, water, and protection. And Moses, although he made some mistakes along the way, was their leader the entire time. Now finally they arrive on the outskirts of their new land. A new leader, Joshua, is prepped to take over for Moses. But before he does, Moses gives a farewell speech. So as we see in Deuteronomy 31, Moses is 120 years old. Plus he's been walking through the desert since he was 80. It's quite impressive when you think about it. So he's tired, and he no longer is able to lead. He tells Joshua to be strong and courageous and unafraid. Then he tells Joshua, God is with you. The same thing that God told Moses when Moses became a leader. Now, most of Moses' story is found in the early books of the Old Testament, but when you get to the book of Psalms, a book filled with poems and songs, we find a prayer that Moses prayed. In it, Moses talks about how big and powerful God is and how small we are in comparison. Then in the middle of this prayer, he says something amazing. He says, teach us to number our days, in Psalm 90, verse 12. Now, most people believe that Moses wrote this psalm when the Israelites were wandering in the desert, and it would be easy for Moses to number his days in the desert because they went by so slowly. Well, what did you do today? Well, I walked the same thing I did yesterday and the day before. But Moses put those days and all other days in perspective when he adds the second half of that verse. It says, teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. And now Moses had lived the life of a rich person, a poor person, a shepherd, an underdog leader, and a national hero. He was no average guy. Movies are still being made about him today, and with all of that Moses had accomplished, he still realized that time was a limited resource. And that's why he prayed, God, show us to live like we have limited time. Show us that we'll be careful and smart with the time that we have. Most of us have a tendency to take our days like they aren't numbered. The only time you number your days is when you're counting down to the end of the week or the end of the school year or the day students get their driver's license. But when it comes to your life, you feel like time is unlimited. And here's the problem with that. When we have an unlimited amount of something, we tend to waste it, don't we? We waste money, we waste food, we waste toilet paper. When you think about it, you're never going to run out of something. You're not very careful how you use it. Now here in the sermon time, I'm going to do a quick illustration that is a visual where we'll have 250 jelly beans in it, and we'll take out handfuls of different amounts of jelly beans to just explain how much time we actually do have left. At the end of that, we're going to see there's not many jelly beans left in the bottle after we sleep and drive and sit in class and eat. So how do we make that time important? These days are important. These days make a big difference when you use them as they're numbered instead of unlimited. I'm not saying you shouldn't have days where you rest and watch movies. Those days are great, but think of it this way. If you want to make your days count, count your days. So as we wrap things up and get ready for small group time, think about the time that you have. And where does that time go? Do you spend your time on the things that are most important to you? If not, what needs to change? Are you valuing what is most valuable to you? So this should be a great conversation with our groups where we can talk about the value of the time that we have together and the value of the time that God gives us in our relationships with each other, in our relationships with God. And hopefully this will set the stage for a great discussion of how are we going to use our time in the new year? Being 2015, how are we going to count our days differently this year than we did last year? So we'll see you at 4:15 at our leader meeting, and I'll have some small group leader training stuff for you at that meeting. Normally I'll throw it in here at the end of the video, but I need to get a couple things in order, especially for this first one that I have for you guys. It'll be really great, so we'll see you at 4:15. Have a great rest of your week. Bye, guys.